Thank you. It's a real honor for us as well, and a real pleasure to be able to share the complete first two films with our audience here, to have you here to speak about it a bit as well. I want to begin by asking about charting the emotional journey, Paul's emotional journey especially in the film. And there are many different layers to this throughout the process, from what you're taking from the book, what's in the script, the storyboards that you talked about when you introduced the film, and then also working with Timothy. And there's so many different steps in his progression. When we meet him, he's very unformed, and by the end here of part two, he's a different person. He's a man now. How did you think about that emotional journey for him, and what you wanted the audience to experience from that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. The idea, first of all, it's the importance. It's a cliche. All filmmakers talk about the importance of casting, and Timothy was the only name on the list that we. I don't know if what I would have done if Timothy didn't embark in the journey. The first movie, it's a much more, let's say, contemplative movie, meditative. It's a boy that discovers a culture, a new planet, and falls in love with that planet. But that boy is a old teenager. Is someone that is under, who has absolutely no power over his destiny and is a victim of the circumstances. And so there's something kind of passive to the character that so it's more introspective, and we work with Timothy on that introspection through the first part. I remember when I was doing the first movie, Timothy, sometime in some scene I had the urge to go back, have more energy, and I said, no, the Muad'Dib is later, Timothy. I kept bringing him down. But it's really in the second movie where the character suddenly has more control over the events and it becomes active and suddenly grows, knows about life, becomes an adult. It's the first time that I was like had the chance to follow an actor like that will age as the character in front of the camera and is becoming slowly a man but Timothy is brilliant, and it was a beautiful collaboration, and it was, I would say, not difficult to sculpt that dramatic curve with him.
There are moments in between the two films when he's learning to fight. For instance, in the first film, and he seems like a boy. Like he just needs a lot of training. And then later on, there's that really pivotal speech where you see him really coming into his power, his quite fearsome power. And it's a different character. And I imagine you're directing him differently. Lots of things must have changed between how you shape those two scenes, for instance.
Absolutely. It's there's something in French we said juvénile. I don't know, juvenile is the right word in English to say someone that looks very young in his features and in his the structure of his body. But again, in between both movies, Timothy trained. He became more, let's say, physical, and he's a very powerful actor, and I think that for him, he has that both personalized side in that more candid, boyish. He's very playful human being, but in the same time, he has that gravitas, that depth, that weight that he can. Used and I remember when we did the scene of the speech, how it became Shakespearean and bigger than life, and it was an explosion in front of the camera, and I was so happy. I knew he would do that. I haven't seen. I remember when he was in The King, that movie where I knew he had that inside him. I knew that he had that capacity of transforming himself, and through some rehearsal also, I had seen that we rehearsed that scene together a lot also, and to find the right tone but again, having to act in front of a crowd of extras with Javier Bardem, so it gives him also the oomph to perform, I think.
And I also want to ask about creating the world for Paul and the other characters to inhabit. This is, of course, a world that readers of the book will know quite well and will have imagined themselves, but there's still some quite startling images when we first see. I guess what I was most struck by was the weight, the mass of some of the structures and the planet, and that creating that sense of a kind of physical weight through how you show Arrakis and how you show the characters as well in that space. And I guess I want to ask you, technically, how do you create that palpable, three-dimensional sense of a place that we've never visited?
Well, first of all, it's the power of nature. We shot as much as possible in the real desert and the real environments, and then the architecture was all designed in a reaction to the power of the ecosystem. The idea that in the book, the cultures, the technologies, the religion, the rituals, everything are influenced by the ecosystem where the people are coming from. If you want to know about the Fremen, you learn about Arrakis, and everything is explained through their relationship with nature. And Patrice Vermette, the production designer, and I, we thought about the architecture being in reaction to the power of the planet, and then that everything looks like a bunker, brutalist architecture that is there to resist for thousands of years under tremendous harsh conditions. And there's like it's we try to stay close to the spirit of the book, which is the exploration of the ecosystems and the relationship between the humans and the ecosystems.
And as you were working with the different heads of departments, production designer, costume, and so on, cinematography as well, was that look of Arrakis, was that already there from the storyboards, or how did you first imagine?
Well, I have to be careful what I'm saying because Sam is in the room. But it's honestly, there's a lot of things that are born in the boards, meaning that there's something very minimalistic about how the movies, the compositions of the images. There's a feeling of loneliness, of melancholia that was in the storyboards already. And a lot of the designs are coming from, as Sam and I are drawing together, that I would say it would be unfair to say that there's a tremendous amount of work that is done from Patrice Vermette. There's the storyboards are there to inform Patrice, and Patrice react to that, and there's like he goes also specifically on part two. On part one, I was more upfront, but on part two, the vocabulary was defined. We knew what the world was looking like. We knew, and so Patrice was much more ahead at one point as he was designing the movie. It was the first time that I had the chance to revisit a planet, and the mot d'ordre, the main idea was to try to create a new spaces that would to not, so the audience will not have the feeling of déjà vu, and to so there was it was easier in prep for part two because we knew where we were going, we knew how to do it, and it was more ambitious, but we had the recipe to do it. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question.
I think you have. We're going to have some time for your questions in a moment as well, but maybe the last thing I'll ask you before we go to the audience is about the sound design and the music, because the immensity that we feel from watching the film, I think, also comes from what we're hearing, not just what we're seeing. And I want to ask you about how you marry the sonic soundscapes of the film, both music and sound design and effects and all that, with the visuals.
Yeah, it's of course when you do sci-fi, the sound is of you create machines, vehicles, and the sound is tremendously important. And I'm working with for both movies with Hans Zimmer, who asked the permission to go very close to the frontier of sound design. And Mark Mangini, who did the first movie, and Richard King, who did the second one, were aware of that, and Richard had worked numerous times with Hans, so they knew where not to fight against Hans' firepower, because the word subtle is not something that applies to my German friend. It is the contribution, what Hans brought to both movies is astronomically important. Is the first person, the first artist I've met when I decided to do this adaptation was Hans. I knew he was a fan of the book, and in fact, I didn't know. I asked him, and he told me then that he was like me, a massive fan of the book, and I had the feeling that to be able to express the sacred relationship of the characters with nature, and to that I find that balance in the movie. I needed a strong composer and someone that, and I knew Hans will have the power, the skills to go where I wanted to go, and it was a very special project for him. Dune is very close to his heart, and honestly, the movie owes him a lot. It's a character.
I'm sure. I mean, some of those sounds you can feel in your chest. Okay, we're going to go to questions now. We've got many people. I see several hands, many hands. Okay. I'm going to go right here first. Go ahead. Yes.
Yep. Me?
Yep.
Well, congratulations again. Your excellent career is fantastic. I just want to know, are you aware that the mix of divine and human issues in many of your movies, especially in this, and how do you deal with that as an artist?
Question is, are you aware of the mix of divine and human elements in your movies, and how do you deal with that as an artist?
The idea of exploration of religion, you mean, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things that attracted me to one of the main ideas that I liked about the book. This idea of the exploration of the danger of the cross mix between politics and religion. That religion is a good thing, but when you mix it with politics, it can become dangerous, and it's something that I was attracted to, and I think that it's a very contemporary topic, so yes, I'm fully aware of it.
Glad to hear. Okay, there's so many hands. I won't get to all of you. I'm want to go in the back. Someone's shaking something in their hand. Yes.
First, I do want to say, anytime you do an adaptation, you have to take some liberties. One of my favorite was what you did with Chani as a character. Considering Dune Messiah is probably one of the harder ones to adapt, do you feel like you might need to take more liberties in adapting that, or do you feel like you're going to try to play it as close as you can to the book?
Question is about, first of all, the questioner liked what you did with adapting Chani and changing her role, but also with Dune Messiah, it's more of a challenging book, and how are you thinking about that book?
So I will be sorry to disappoint you, but I will not talk about what is not done. But I can say that Shani was crucial to this adaptation. It's one of the big differences in the book for the people who read the book. Shani believes in Paul, follow him, and I wanted when the book came out, it's a story I told a few times in the press tour, so I'm sorry if I repeat myself, but when the book came out, Frank Herbert was disappointed about how the book was perceived, as people felt it was a celebration of Paul Atreides, and Amy wanted the book to be a cautionary tale. So he wrote a little book called Dune Messiah in order to correct that perception. And me knowing that, I did this adaptation, part 2, I think less faithful to the book, more faithful to Frank Herbert and the initial intentions that it should be a cautionary tale about charismatic figure, messianic figures, and in order to do so, I use Shani's character. So in the movie, there's a moment where there's like a slight shift where we slowly fall more into Shani's perspective, to see where Paul to become critic about Paul's decision, and that is for me was fundamental for the success of this adaptation.
Thank you. Let's go right here. Second right here.
Yeah,
Yep.
hi. I just want to know, are you planning on doing a director's cut of both movies? Having 45 minutes of footage that's on the floor?
Will you do a director's cut of both films?
You said it today. I'm myself in the cutting room. I work with Joe Walker, the editor, but I love editing, and I think very severe with my own material. And when it's on the cutting floor, it's dead, and it's going away for specific reasons, and the movie rejects scenes sometimes, and when you finally finish the final cut, it's the movie is alive. There's blood that is going out. It's in the veins. It walks by itself. You cannot touch it again. I need to talk to Francis Ford Coppola. I don't understand, and I absolutely revere the master, but why does he touch over and over again his masterpieces? I don't know why he goes back. I think that when a movie is finished, sometimes I see my own. It happens sometimes that I see my own work with distance, and I will cut things out. I will remove, but I think it's not. You should not do that. I don't. In the history of painting, very few painters went back to the museum with paint. I think. I know some of them did,
but you said just now that the movie will reject certain scenes at a certain point. How does your film reject something that you've already shot?
Right. The thing is, that is why editing is a crucial process, and it's a very, very creative and powerful moment in the film's life. And in a way, there are things that when you shot them, that became more powerful that was what was on paper, and sometimes a character looking at the other character, you don't need the 3-minute monologue, because you feel that what he expressed with just the way his presence is more powerful, and that's it, and that's what I would say.
Thank you. Okay, time for just a few more. We'll go right here. Yep.
Hi, Cameron. Hi, Denis. Thank you for coming back. You've talked at length about Lawrence of Arabia and its influence on this film. I'm wondering, you haven't ever been specific about the chronology. Was Dune for you first, and then you saw Lawrence of Arabia, and then you saw Star Wars? What was the delineation?
Okay, the question is about the influence of Lawrence of Arabia and also the Dune book and Star Wars. What is the chronology?
Okay, the truth is, I saw Star Wars first, because I was like, in 1977, I was 10 years old. And I still remember opening a newspaper and seeing a picture, a frame of Obi-Wan Kenobi and Luke Skywalker in the speeder and the land speeder, and talking to the stormtrooper, and the light and the textures, and it felt so real, and I was like, so Star Wars was the first Star Wars was a big thing for me. Then came Dune, after I read Dune, after that, and I saw Lawrence of Arabia for the first time as I was a film student, maybe 18 years old or something like that. I was alone in a huge theater in Montreal, and I saw a 17mm print of Lawrence of Arabia, 4 hours alone, and it's still to this day, it's one of the best screening of my life. And I remember going back to film school the next day, and I thought I learned more watching Lawrence of Arabia than 3 years of film school. and I received a fantastic gift 2 years ago. When did we do
it was around the time of the first Dune. So
yeah. Cameron organized a screening again in 65mm, I think, of Lawrence of Arabia, and again, it was a fantastic experience. Thank you again.
Our pleasure. All right. Seems like everyone has their hands up now. I can't answer all.
I don't see you guys really because the spot is pretty
this,
intense.
this side is a little hard. We're gonna go right here in the white top.
Me?
Yeah.
Actually, this is for my brother. I wanted to get him to ask him a question for you. Thank you. Hi, Denis. You say that this is like you try to bring out the spirit for Frank the books, right? But I have a question: is during your writing process, is there anything you wish you could have added, or something that you had to remove during your screenplay? And like, how do you go about your creative process in adapting something that's already made into your own vision and your own spin?
Thank you for your question. In adapting Frank Herbert's book, were there things ever that you thought you wanted to add to what he'd written, or things that you needed to take away from the book? And how do you go about the process of adaptation?
First, when you adapt, it's a very harsh process. I had to kill a lot of darlings, a lot of things I loved about the books, but more specifically, for the people who know the book, there are like many schools of thought, or the Mantat, the people that in Dune, humanity has reached a level of perfection, and there are different school of thought, and one of them is the Mantat. They are like human computers. We see to figure out in part one. I wish I could have been able to bring him back in part two. It became very fussy and complex, so I could not bring back to figure out, and it's something that I wish I could have done. But I will say that both movies are radically Bene Gesserit adaptation. They are like focused on the Bene Gesserit sisters.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go for just two more. We'll go way in the back. Waving doesn't always help, so let's go to someone who is in the back corner, hand going like that just now. Yeah, that's you.
First of all, thank you so much for coming. I just think this is a very special experience for everybody here.
Thank you.
Can you talk a bit about the costume design and if that was a collaborative experience for you, because there's so much of the narrative within the costume design that isn't really explicitly set.
Questions about the costume design, and so much of the narrative is woven into the costumes. Can you talk about developing that side of the film?
I worked with a costume designer. Her name is Jacqueline West, and Jacqueline is well known for her period movies. And it was the first time she was doing sci-fi, if I'm not mistaken. And she loved Dune, but I love the fact that she was a period historical specialist. If you saw Killer of the Flower Moons, Scorsese movie, she's the one with a fantastic work from Jacqueline. We approached it with the same spirit as a historical movie. And so I would give a lot of credits, sorry, to Jacqueline. There's one costume that I love that was thought of, and I asked Sam, who is here, my storyboard artist, to draw the Reverend Mother. And I said, just take your Sharpie and make a big black line. And that was the bird of that costume, just a bold black line, like obsidian. So some costumes like that, like the Bene Gesserits were born a bit on storyboards, but Jacqueline brought all her skills and poetry to the screen, so I will give her all the credits. Yeah. Voilà.
Can I just ask you about the still suits? Because when you read the books, that's something that I think many of us have such a strong vision of. And in working with Jacqueline on the still suits in particular, what kinds of decisions did you make?
There was something about Dune is a blend of science fiction and medieval aestheticism, and we were trying so the still suit will look like functional, that will look a bit like body armors in the same time, and that will feel like something that's coming from the world of insects a little bit on the same time, and something that it was a very long process to define what the still suit will look like. Sam, I remember, was one of the first one that started to attack some ideas on paper, but it's really true with Jacqueline's work that finally we found that shape that I love so much, and that it feels like a very active, like a desert pajama that is very structured. And but it was a challenge to bring that to the screen, and also the still suit had to resist for real to the desert, to the environment. They had to be made so the actors could perform under very high temperatures, and so it's I will not lie, I don't think they were very comfortable, but they look great.
Thank you. All right, time for just. Okay, this is inventive. Someone's got a red light. Yeah. All right, you wait. Okay.
So speaking on revisiting the world and making it look different than how you did with the first film, watching both films back to back, and you realize how you shot both films in different aspect ratios, different lenses, different cameras, but still utilizing IMAX. I'm wondering about the collaboration with your cinematographer Greg on what scenes you wanted to use with IMAX and how you wanted to differentiate the world with those lenses, with those aspect ratios. So.
Question is about the cinematography, specifically shooting with IMAX cameras and the IMAX aspect ratio, and how did you make decisions with your cinematographer about what would be an IMAX through both parts 1 and 2?
Yeah, the first movie was shot in two formats, in IMAX and in 235. The idea was to, because it's a true test that I did, I realized, and by watching the work of other filmmakers also, is that I realized that by changing the aspect ratio in a movie, it's like another way, a new tool of expression, a new form of expression, when you can create punctuation or increase the power of a shot by switching the format in between in between two scenes or in a scene, and it's like a baseline that a new baseline that I never used before, that I never had the chance to use before. And so in the first movie, everything involving nature, desert, and space is in IMAX, and the interiors and things that are more intimate were shot in 235. That was the approach. So when the characters will discover the desert or travel through the desert, we will have that oomph, that impact of the landscape, and that was the idea. For the second movie, which happened most of it in the desert, we decided to shoot all the movie in IMAX and play a bit between there's a punctuation between 190 and 143, just at specific moment to create that punctuation, that dramatic punctuation. But the second one was shot entirely in IMAX, yeah. And it's Greg and it requires a discipline, because you have to shoot all the time thinking about N235 and IMAX, and it's a not ideal way of shooting, and it's but it's a discipline, and I was working with a very strong cinematographer, so we had a lot of fun to play with those cameras. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, last question. We're going to go right here.
Hello. I was so moved seeing it again. Thank you again for sharing. I know everyone said that before. A friend of mine was in Blade Runner 2045, Sylvia Hoeks, and she talked about how much you valued surprise, that she surprised you in the audition, that she was often surprised on set. I wondered, you shot these several years ago, is there anything that surprises you when you watch them anew?
Is there anything that surprises you when you watch the films now, having valued surprise so much?
You're talking about Dune specifically, or Blade Runner 2049?
Dune specifically, but I'd love to hear about any movies that surprise you when you watch them years later.
Yeah, it's a good question, because when you finish a movie, there's like as you're making it, you're going through a lot of joys and a lot of pain and a lot of surprises, good surprises, disappointments. You go through all the spectrum of emotions, and you finish the movie, and you give your best to make it as best as you can. You give everything, and when the movie's finished, it takes me years before I can watch it again without being in contact. Like, I really debated with myself, should I sit with you today? And because I wish I had done it, but in the same time, emotionally, I'm not ready to watch part 2 again. and it's like, I feel I need some distance in order to be able to. It takes time for the wounds to heal. It's normal. All my movies have been like that. It takes me years and years and years to be able to think to watch them again. And when I do, it's always by accident somewhere. So because, for instance, Blade Runner 2049, I had many years later to approve a print, a 35mm print of it. And I was alone in a theater watching it, and I had suddenly the impression that I was seeing maybe for the first time for real with the proper distance, and like being finally I made peace with the project. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, filmmaker are neurotic.
Well, Denis, thank you so much for sharing your vision for Dune Part 1 and Part 2 with us today. It's been a really special experience, as you said. We're really glad to see you back in Toronto. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.